Hi, everyone. I'm Mia Sullivan, 29 years old, and right now I'm sitting here feeling like my whole world just flipped upside down. Yesterday, my mom blocked my grandma's phone number. Yeah, you heard that right. Grandma Dot called her, quietly asking if she could help with a couple $100 for her medication this month. Mom didn't even answer. She just hit block. And in our family group chat, my Aunt Christine typed out, "Mom's already lived long enough, hasn't she? Let's not drag this out." I read that message and my stomach dropped. Because if you've ever felt like the family disappointment, the one nobody really wanted around, you're going to want to stick around for what happened next. Trust me, it's not what you expect. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever been the one who had to step up when no one else would, and subscribe so you don't miss the rest. This one's personal. Let me take you back to the beginning because to really understand my family, you have to understand one simple truth. I was never supposed to exist. My mom, Rachel, was 19 when she got pregnant with me. Fresh out of high school, dating a guy her parents hated, and completely unprepared for motherhood. I was, to put it kindly, an inconvenience. While other kids grew up hearing bedtime stories about how much their parents wanted them, I grew up knowing I was a mistake. Not the cute, happy accident kind of mistake, the kind that derails plans, ruins futures, and leaves resentment that never quite fades. When I was 4, Mom met my stepdad. He was stable, employed, respectable. He wanted to marry her, but he came with one condition. He wasn't interested in raising someone else's kid. So Mom made her choice. She chose her new life over me. I still remember the day she packed my little blue suitcase. She told me I was going to stay with Grandma Dot for just a little while. That little while turned into forever. By the time I turned 5, Mom had married, moved to a nice suburb an hour away, and started her real family. First came my half-brother Caleb, then my half-sister Sophie 2 years later. To be fair, Mom didn't abandon me completely. She'd show up on holidays or birthdays, bring expensive gifts that felt more like guilt payments than love. She'd take photos of us together, proof for her friends that she was still a good mom to her firstborn. Then she'd leave again, back to her picture-perfect life where I didn't quite fit. Must be nice to have a family you can visit when it's convenient. But Grandma Dot became everything to me. She was 53 when I moved in permanently, a widow who'd been looking forward to her quiet independence. Instead, she got a heartbroken 4-year-old who had nightmares about being left behind. Talk about drawing the short straw. But here's the thing about Grandma Dot. She never once made me feel like a burden. When I asked why Mommy didn't want me anymore, she'd sit me down in her tiny kitchen, make us both hot chocolate, and say, "Sometimes people make choices that don't make sense to the rest of us, sweetheart, but you're exactly where you're supposed to be." And that's where my story really starts. Grandma Dot was everything I needed and more. She worked double shifts at the local diner just to make sure I had dance classes, new school shoes, and enough groceries. When other kids had parents cheering at soccer games or school plays, Grandma Dot was there in her waitress uniform, clapping the loudest, even if her feet were killing her after a long shift. She helped me with homework even though she'd only gone to school through the 8th grade. She'd sit with me at the kitchen table, reading aloud every night until I was old enough to be embarrassed about it. And when I doubted myself, which was often because the rest of the family never let me forget I was the mistake, she'd look me in the eye and say, "You're stronger than you know, Mia. You've been proving that since the day your mom dropped you off." The rest of my mom's family, they treated me like a reminder of her poor judgment. Polite on the surface, but always with that undercurrent. You don't really belong here. At family gatherings, I was the kid who stayed at the children's table way past the age when my cousins moved to the adult one. I was the one they forgot to include in group photos, the afterthought when planning vacations, because nothing builds a kid's confidence like being consistently treated as optional. My Aunt Christine was especially good at it. She'd ask about my mom with this fake concern. "How's Rachel doing? It must be so hard for her having to worry about you on top of everything else." The message was clear. I was a problem to be managed, a complication in her perfect life. But Grandma Dot saw me differently. To her, I wasn't a mistake or a burden. I was her granddaughter, full stop. She celebrated every little win like it was the Super Bowl. When I made honor roll, she taped the certificate to the fridge and left it there for years. When I got accepted to college with a partial scholarship, she cried happy tears and took me out for the fanciest dinner we could afford, a real sit-down place with cloth napkins. She never had much money, but she had endless love and this unshakable belief in me. When I'd come home crying because someone at school asked why my mom never showed up, she'd hug me tight and whisper, "You're not defined by what other people do, sweetheart. You're defined by what you do." By the time I graduated college and got my first job in marketing, the family patterns were set in stone. Mom kept just enough contact to avoid looking like a total deadbeat. Christmas cards with generic messages, the occasional like on my Facebook posts, never a call just to see how I was doing. Why bother when you can just hit thumbs up on someone's life? But even as we built our little world together, I started noticing how the rest of the family was slowly pushing her away too. And that's when things started to hurt in a whole new way. It started small, like most hurts do. Family group texts that somehow never included us. I only found out about one when my cousin Hannah accidentally added me to a thread about Christmas plans. The messages made it clear they'd been coordinating everything without us for months. Family unity apparently meant excluding the two people who actually needed to feel included. When I mentioned it to Grandma Dot, she just shrugged, that quiet strength of hers kicking in. "They can have their little club, sweetheart. We don't need their approval to be family." But I could see the flicker in her eyes, the hurt she tried so hard to hide. These were her kids, her grandkids. She'd raised them, babysat for free, loaned money when they were in a pinch. And now, as she got older and maybe needed a little support, they were quietly fading her out. At holiday dinners, I started noticing how conversations stopped when she walked into the room. Plans for group trips or new restaurants would be discussed right in front of her, but somehow she'd never get the invite until it was too late, or they'd forget to tell her until photos were already on Facebook. It was like watching a slow, polite erasure. The worst was Aunt Christine. She had this way of making it sound like she was doing Grandma a favor by not inviting her. "Mom, you know how busy everyone is. It's just easier this way." Easier for who? Not for the woman who'd spent decades making things easier for everyone else. Grandma Dot handled it with her usual grace, at least on the outside. She'd smile and nod when they talked about the trips she hadn't been invited to, never mentioning the exclusion. "Sounds like everyone had a wonderful time," she'd say, swallowing her disappointment like it was nothing. But I saw the little changes. She ate less, slept more. That bright spark in her eyes dimmed just a bit. One Saturday, while we were planting tomatoes in her garden, she said something that broke my heart a little. "You know what I realized the other day, Mia? I spent so many years worried about being a burden to my kids that I forgot to expect them to act like family." It was the first time she'd admitted out loud that maybe their behavior wasn't just oversight. I wasn't as forgiving as she was. These were adults who'd benefited from her sacrifices for decades, and now that she was in her mid-70s, arthritis slowing her down, they were finding every excuse to step back. When she mentioned it to Aunt Christine, the response was telling. "It's just easier this way, Mom." I started driving out every weekend instead of every other week. We'd cook together, watch her favorite game shows, work in the garden. She moved slower, but her mind was sharp, her humor still quick. We were our own little team. Then came the engagement party for my half-brother Caleb. Mom posted photos on Facebook. Big family gathering, everyone dressed up, huge smiles. Everyone except Grandma Dot and me. Not even a text to say it was happening. When I called Mom to ask why, she sounded surprised I'd even noticed. "It was very last minute, Mia. We figured you were busy." Busy. Right, because a 77-year-old woman with no social calendar is definitely too busy for her own grandson's engagement party. That night, I drove to Grandma's house. She was sitting in her living room flipping through an old photo album. "She used to include me in everything," she said quietly. "I hosted every holiday, every birthday. Now I find out about them on social media like a stranger." I sat beside her, my chest tight. "They don't deserve you, Grandma." She looked up, eyes watery, but voice steady. "They're still my children, Mia. I don't know how to stop loving them, even when they make me feel invisible." That was the moment I realized how deep the rejection went. They weren't just forgetting us, they were erasing her while she was still alive. And that's when the anger started to build in me. Anger I didn't know what to do with yet. But the real test was coming, and it would change everything. The message came through on a Thursday morning while I was in a client meeting. My phone buzzed, and when I finally checked it, I saw I'd been added to the family group chat, the one they'd kept secret for so long. My heart jumped for a second, thinking maybe things were changing. But as I scrolled up, I realized this wasn't an olive branch. It was a window into something much uglier. The first message was from Grandma Dot, sent at 6:47 a.m. "Good morning, everyone. I hate to ask, but I'm short about $200 for my medications this month. Insurance isn't covering as much anymore. Could anyone help? I'll pay it back as soon as I can." It was such a simple, humble request. $200 for pills that kept her going, from a woman who'd spent her whole life helping everyone else. The replies came fast, but not with help. Aunt Christine first. "Mom, have you tried the pharmacy payment plan?" "Mom, there are senior programs for this. Maybe look into those." "Hannah, could you maybe skip the non-essentials for now?" As if any prescription for a 77-year-old is non-essential. Then Aunt Christine dropped the bomb. "Honestly, at her age, how much longer does she really need these meds anymore? She's already lived longer than most people." I stared at those words until my eyes burned. This was my grandma, the woman who'd raised half these people, who'd loaned them money, babysat for their kids, cooked their holiday meals. And now, as she got older and maybe needed a little support, they were suggesting maybe she didn't need to anymore. The chat went quiet after that. No one pushed back. No one said, "That's awful." Just silence. A few hours later, Grandma Dot typed again. "Never mind, everyone. I'll figure it out. Sorry to bother you all." Sorry. She was apologizing for needing help to live. My hands shook as I screenshotted every single message. If this was the family's true face, I wanted proof. I responded right away. "Grandma Dot, don't worry about it. I'll take care of the medications. Can you call me tonight?" Suddenly, everyone had opinions. Christine: "Mia, you don't need to do that. Mom can handle her own expenses." Mom: "Sweetie, we were just trying to find sustainable solutions." Hannah: "She's probably exaggerating how much she needs anyway." The backpedaling was sickening. Now that someone was actually stepping up, they wanted to play it down, make me look like the overreactor, because God forbid they look like the heartless ones. I called Grandma Dot immediately. "Honey, you don't have to do this," she said softly. "Grandma, stop. You weren't being dramatic. You asked for help with a basic need and they treated you like a burden. That's not okay." "They're busy, Mia. Everyone has their own lives." "They're not too busy to plan elaborate parties and post about them. They're only too busy when you need something. Funny how that works." There was a long pause. Then her voice came out smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I know." That admission broke something in me. She'd spent years protecting their image, even to me, pretending their neglect was innocent when it was anything but. "I'm coming this weekend," I told her. "We're going to the pharmacy together and you're never apologizing for needing help again." After we hung up, I sat in my car outside the office, shaking with rage. These people had taken from her for decades, and the moment she needed something back, they made her feel guilty for asking. But I had no idea that Grandma Dot had already set something in motion, a quiet test that would expose every single one of them. That weekend, I drove out to Grandma's house with my trunk full of groceries and every bit of anger I'd been holding in. She deserved my support, not my rage, even if the rage was all on her behalf. I found her in the kitchen, hands shaking a little as she made tea. "You didn't have to come all this way, honey," she said, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Yes, I did," I told her. "I unpacked the bags, including the ones from the pharmacy. I picked up your medications, all of them, for the next 3 months." Her eyes filled with tears. "Mia, that's too much. I can't let you." "You can and you will. Grandma, how long has it been since any of them actually helped you with anything?" She stirred her tea slowly, thinking, "Your mom brought me a casserole when I had that cold last winter." "A casserole, when you were sick." I shook my head. "And what about anything real? Because one casserole isn't supposed to make up for a lifetime of you taking care of everyone else." She didn't answer, but the truth was all over her face. She'd been struggling for months, maybe longer, trying to stay independent while her own kids patted themselves on the back for their busy lives. "Can I see that group chat again?" I asked gently. She handed me her phone, reluctant. I read through it all again, my anger building with every dismissive line. Then I saw the message I'd missed before, from Cousin Lucas. Maybe it's time to start thinking about other options for Grandma. Assisted living places handle all this medication stuff. They weren't just ignoring her need, they were already planning to ship her off so they wouldn't have to deal with her aging. "Did you see Lucas's message about assisted living?" I asked. Her face tightened. "I saw it, but what I want seems to matter much anymore." That evening, we sat on her front porch watching the sunset, just like we used to when I was little. The silence was comfortable, but her sadness hung heavy in the air. "I keep wondering where I went wrong with them. I thought I raised them to be kind people." "You did raise them to be kind. They're choosing not to be. The problem isn't you, Grandma. It's them not being ready to give back when you need it." She nodded slowly. "I never wanted to be a burden." "Needing help doesn't make you a burden, it makes you human." That night, I lay awake in my old bedroom, staring at the ceiling and making plans. Not revenge plans, I'm not that dramatic, but practical ones. Grandma Dot needed an advocate, someone who'd show up when she needed help, someone who wouldn't treat her like an inconvenience. So the next morning, over breakfast, I told her, "I'm going to start coming here every weekend, and I'm going to set up automatic payments for your meds, utilities, groceries, whatever you need. Consider it our family support system." "Honey, you can't afford to take care of both of us. You have your own life." "My life includes you. It always has, because that's how real family works. You don't abandon people when they need you most." She cried then. Quiet, steady tears, and I knew they were tears of relief as much as gratitude. For the first time, I felt like I was finally protecting the woman who'd protected me my whole life. But what I didn't know yet was that she'd been protecting something much bigger all along. 3 days after that breakfast promise, my phone rang late at night. It was Grandma Dot, unusual for her to call after 10. I picked up right away, heart racing. "Grandma? Everything okay?" "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry to call this late. I couldn't sleep, and there's something I need to tell you in person. Can you come this weekend instead of next? It's important." Her voice sounded different, not worried, more like she was holding back a laugh. "Of course. I'll leave work early Friday. You sure you're okay?" "I'm better than okay, sweetheart. Just come soon." The drive Friday felt endless. I kept running through possibilities. Maybe she'd finally decided on assisted living, or the doctor had said something bad. When I pulled into her driveway, the house was lit up like Christmas, every window glowing. That was odd. She always turned off lights to save on the bill. She opened the door before I knocked, wearing her best dress, the blue one she saved for special occasions. Her silver hair was done nice, lipstick on, and her smile, it was radiant. "There's my girl." She pulled me into the longest hug. "Come in. I have so much to tell you." She led me to the living room where she'd set out her good china and a plate of my favorite cookies. This wasn't a normal visit. "Grandma, you're making me nervous. What's going on?" She sat in her favorite chair, still smiling that mysterious smile.
Sit down, honey. What I'm about to say is going to sound unbelievable. I perched on the couch. She didn't look sick. If anything, she looked like she'd just won the lottery.
3 months ago, she began, I bought a lottery ticket at the grocery store. Just one, on a whim. I never buy them, but something told me to try. I checked the numbers that night, thought I didn't win, so I forgot about it. The ticket sat in my purse for months. My heart sank a little. Oh no, a scam? Someone had convinced her she won? But 2 weeks ago, she continued, I was cleaning out my purse and found it. I checked the numbers again, properly this time. Mia, I matched all 6. The room tilted. I stared at her. All 6? She nodded, reached into a drawer, and pulled out an official envelope from the State Lottery Commission. She handed it to me. I won the jackpot, sweetheart. $333 million. After taxes, still over $200 million. I took the lump sum. I read the letter twice. Official seals, legal language. It was real. My grandma, who clipped coupons and saved every penny, had just become one of the richest people in the state. But you ask them for money for your medications. Her expression shifted, something calm, almost proud. Yes, I did, and they failed the test. The words hit me hard. You tested them? I already had the money when I sent that message. I could have bought the whole pharmacy, but I needed to know who would show up when there was nothing to gain, who would help without expecting anything back. I started crying then, not pretty tears, but the ugly, overwhelming kind, because in that moment, I understood everything. The family had performed love for years, when it was convenient, when it looked good, but when she needed real help, they'd shown their true colors. And only you passed, she whispered. Only you showed up. She pulled me into her arms like she did when I was 4. We cried together for the years of hurt, for the relief of finally being seen. So, what happens now? I asked when we could breathe again. Her smile turned mischievous. Now we live, honey, really live. And just like that, everything changed. We talked until almost 2 a.m. that night, making plans that felt like dreams we'd never dared to say out loud. Grandma Dot pulled out a notebook she'd been filling in secret for the past 2 weeks. Pages and pages of her neat handwriting, lists of things she wanted to do now that she didn't have to worry about money anymore. The first thing she said she'd do was take me on that trip to Europe I'd always talked about in college, the one I swore I'd do someday when I could afford it. First class is supposed to be comfortable, she said with a little grin. I suppose it's time I tried new things. I laughed through my tears. The woman who used to cut open toothpaste tubes to get the last bit out was casually talking about first class like it was no big deal. We spent the next week calling lawyers and financial advisors, people who specialize in sudden wealth, because apparently that's a whole industry. Turns out when you win 9 figures, you need experts to keep you from losing it all. By the end of the week, we had trusts set up, wills updated, and a charitable foundation started. The first trust was for me, $20 million, structured so I'd have steady income for life with the principal protected for any kids I might have someday. 20 million. I made the lawyer repeat the number twice. This ensures you'll never have to depend on anyone who doesn't value you, Grandma Dot said simply. The second trust was for charity, $50 million to a foundation focused on supporting grandparents raising grandchildren and helping seniors with medication costs. It was personal. It was her way of turning her own pain into something good for others. And the will, that was where she drew the line. I want to be very specific, she told the lawyer. My daughter Rachel and my daughter Christine each get $1, along with a letter explaining why their treatment of me in my time of need disqualified them. My other grandchildren, Caleb, Sophie, Hannah, Lucas, get nothing. They showed the same lack of character as their parents. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Harlan, are you certain? Family dynamics can change, and excluding close relatives often leads to contests. Grandma Dot pulled out her phone and showed him the screenshots of the group chat, the dismissive replies, and Christine's comment about her having lived long enough. I'm not doing this out of emotion, she said calmly. I'm doing it based on evidence. This is what they said when they thought I was struggling and needed help with basic medication. Their words tell me everything I need to know. The lawyer read through it again, his face shifting from professional to something like quiet disgust. I see, he said. I'll draft everything as you specify, and I'll make sure it's ironclad. By the end of that week, everything was official. Trusts funded, will signed and witnessed, foundation launched. Grandma Dot went from worrying about utility bills to controlling an 8-figure endowment for good causes. How does it feel? I asked as we left the lawyer's office. Like I can finally breathe, she said. For the first time in my life, I have real power, not the kind that comes from guilt or obligation, but the kind that comes from choice. That evening, we celebrated by doing something we'd never imagined. We booked first-class tickets to Ireland for the next month. Grandma Dot wanted to see the village where her grandmother was born. Now she could do it in style, without clipping coupons or checking prices. Are you ready for the family to find out? I asked as we planned the trip. I'm ready for whatever comes, but Mia, promise me something. No matter what they say, no matter how much they try to rewrite history, don't let them make you doubt what we know is true. We saw their real selves when they thought there was nothing to gain. Everything else is just performance. I promised. And deep down, I knew we'd need that promise soon, because freedom like this doesn't stay secret forever. Apparently, someone had spotted a photo I posted on Instagram of us at a luxury hotel in Dublin and recognized Grandma Dot from local news about the lottery winner. A nosy commenter connected the dots, and Hannah reposted it with a screenshot. The family exploded. I showed Grandma Dot the screen. She just smiled, calm as ever. Well, I suppose that settles the question of when to tell them. The texts were a roller coaster. At first, confusion. Mom, is this real? You won the lottery? Then, outrage. Why didn't anyone tell us? This affects the whole family. Then, desperate calculation. We need to talk about financial planning, tax implications. We should all be involved. Mom called. I put it on speaker. Mia, where are you? Hi, Mom. We're in Ireland with Grandma Dot, having a lovely time. The weather's beautiful. Ireland? And you didn't tell us about her winning the lottery? We had to find out from social media. Probably because you blocked her number. Hard to share good news when you won't take her calls. Silence. Then, that's not the point. This is life-changing money. We need to discuss how to handle it, make sure she doesn't get taken advantage of. The sudden concern for her welfare was almost funny. 3 weeks ago, they'd suggested she didn't need her meds because she'd lived long enough. Now they were worried about scammers? Grandma's already handled everything, I said evenly. She's been working with top lawyers and advisors. She's quite capable. Grandma Dot leaned in, voice steady. Tell them we're enjoying our trip. We'll talk when we get back. I hung up. The phone kept buzzing. More texts, more calls. And Christine. Mia, you're influencing her decisions. This needs to stop. Lucas. We're all coming to Mom's house tonight to discuss this as a family. Grandma Dot pulled out her own phone. She thinks it's time for one final message. She typed slowly, deliberately. I understand you're concerned about my lottery win. I've made careful decisions about my estate. Mia and I are in Ireland celebrating. We'll discuss everything when we return. In the meantime, you might want to reflect on how your response to my request for medication help influenced my thinking about family and inheritance. She hit send. The replies came fast, panicked, pleading, rewriting history. Mom, there's been a misunderstanding about that conversation. We were just trying to help. We love you. Money shouldn't change family relationships. I never said anything about assisted living. It was from a place of love. We read them together, sipping tea, watching tourists snap photos of the castle across the street.
They think we're idiots, I said. They think we're the same people we were a month ago, Grandma Dot corrected gently. People who'd accept their excuses because they were afraid of being alone. We weren't afraid anymore. We had each other, and we had the freedom to choose who got to be in our lives. And the reckoning was just beginning. We extended our trip a few days, adding London for shows and a castle tour, giving us time to prepare for what was waiting. The texts kept coming. More apologies, more excuses, more desperate attempts to rewrite what they'd said. But we were 5,000 miles away, sipping tea and laughing at how predictable it all was. When we finally flew home, we took a taxi straight to Grandma Dot's house. It was evening, and the driveway was packed. 4 cars. Through the windows, we could see shadows moving inside. They'd let themselves in. How nice, Grandma Dot murmured. They finally wanted to spend time here. She turned the key and pushed the door open. Hello, everyone. We're home. The talking stopped instantly. Chairs scraped. Footsteps hurried toward us. They'd arranged themselves like a courtroom. Mom and Aunt Christine on the couch, Caleb and Sophie standing behind like backups, Hannah and Lucas in the armchairs. The coffee table was covered with printouts, estate law, tax advice, lottery rules. They'd come prepared for a fight. There you are. Aunt Christine stood up like we'd kept them waiting. We weren't expecting a welcoming committee, Grandma Dot replied mildly, settling into her favorite chair like it was any other evening. Mom started right in. We need to talk about this lottery situation. There are decisions to make, and we're concerned you might not have all the information. What decisions? Grandma Dot asked, voice pleasant but edged. Financial planning, Lucas said. This much money needs professional management, tax strategies, estate planning. Grandma Dot smiled. All of which I've already handled. I've been working with Harrison Keller and Associates for weeks. Everything is structured and protected. The room went quiet. They exchanged glances. Mom, Aunt Christine said carefully, we're just worried you might have been influenced. Sudden wealth can be overwhelming, and sometimes people take advantage of older individuals. The implication hung there, that I was the one manipulating her. Are you suggesting Mia is taking advantage of me? Grandma Dot asked, still calm. We're not saying anything, just that major decisions should be discussed with the whole family. The whole family, Grandma Dot repeated. Interesting. When did we become the kind of family that discusses major decisions together? Silence, because they knew the answer. Never. This is different, Christine said. This affects everyone. How exactly? I asked. Inheritance planning, Hannah said, making sure the money stays in the family. Grandma Dot stood and walked to the mantel, pulling out a document. I've updated my will, she announced. Mia inherits the remainder. You each get $1, along with copies of the text messages explaining why. The explosion was immediate. Shouts, protests, accusations. You can't be serious. This is crazy. Mia poisoned you against us. Grandma Dot let them rage until they ran out of steam. I'm completely serious, she said when the room quieted, and my decision is final. The will is executed, witnessed, and ironclad. One by one, they left, some angry, some pleading, all finally understanding that their cruelty had cost them everything. When the last car pulled away, Grandma Dot and I sat in the quiet living room, surrounded by their scattered papers. How do you feel? I asked.
Free, she said simply. Completely free. And in that moment, we both knew. The test was over. We had passed. And we were enough for each other. The house fell quiet after they left. Grandma Dot and I sat on the porch that night watching the stars come out, just like we used to when I was little. No more pretending. No more making excuses for people who never earned our trust. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you, Mia, for seeing me when they couldn't, for choosing me when it was hard. I squeezed back. You chose me first, Grandma, every single day. That's the thing about real family. It's not about blood. It's about who shows up when there's nothing to gain, who loves you without conditions, who fights for you even when it costs something. Grandma Dot and I, we'd chosen each other long before the money ever came, and now we had the freedom to build a life full of the things we'd always deserved: peace, laughter, travel, and the kind of love that doesn't come with strings. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, like you were the burden, the mistake, the one they forgot, please know this: you're not alone, and you don't have to stay in a place that makes you feel small. Sometimes the best families aren't the ones you're born into, they're the ones you choose. And the moment you choose yourself, choose the people who truly see you, you start healing. Thank you for listening to our story. If it resonated with you, drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And remember, you deserve people who show up for you, always. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.